to talk about.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the brand new endeavor from the Casa D18 Studios channel for the love of wrestling. I am, of course, the Renegade of Wrestling, JJ Williams. Thanking you guys for tuning in for this series premiere. Good to see some of you guys turning out this early in the morning for us West Coasters. For you East Coasters, it's right about high noon. Starting to get your lunch break. So hopefully this will be, your lunch break material here going forth. See what we got going on in the comments. Jeff here. Thank you very much, Boss Man Meacham, for being here. Hell of a Monday Night Raw last night. Looking forward to seeing what JJ thought about all the goings on. Mansfield in the house. Love the countdown. Nice intro. Jeff saying, I want to talk about this tremendous new intro. Again, thank you very much. We got Mansfield saying that was effing cool. I'm not 5 minutes in yet, so I'm not going to cuss yet, Mansfield, but thank you very much. Stat Boy in the house. Congrats on the new show. Thank you. When you're hit the channel, you can kind of create a show when you need to. But I appreciate it, brother. Again, Jeff, breakfast with the Renegade, DDPY after Can't Stop, Won't Stop. Exactly. So the question that was asked by the American Nightmare at the end of the Raw intro here that I had, and yes, going forth, just make sure you guys pay attention because each day with each theme that I discuss, there's a different quote at the end of the intro. So you guys are just going to have to keep your ears open for what they are. But we're here to discuss Raw today. And I know there's a lot of other review shows out there. Aaron Rift, NoDQ.com, has his nightly reviews after Raw, Dynamite, SmackDown. Our good buddy Datilla has her reviews after Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown. But I wanted to try and make it a little bit different. I figured that since we get the coverage here, or at least I do, some people in the chat that are West Coasters still get East Coast feeds. But I get pretty much everything except AEW at West Coast times. So 8 to 11 for Raw, 8 to 10 for SmackDown and NXT. It's too late to try and do a show at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. Plus, got to be considerate of the house. People are asleep, etc., etc. So I figured go to bed, wake up in the morning, do a morning show on it. Really get to process and digest what you saw. If you watch the show and it seemed good, and then you go to bed, you wake up in the morning, you're still like, man, that was a solid episode. Then clearly it resonated with you on all the right levels. However, in the offbeat chance that you go to bed and you think that it was a decent show, but then you wake up in the morning, you're like, man, I really can't remember anything that happened in that 3 hours. Then clearly it wasn't as good as you initially thought because nothing resonated with you. So I felt like that was my seed and my genesis as far as deciding to do this on Mondays, is to see what held in the memories. And yes, I do have notes, lengthy notes about everything that went on for me to refer back to. So if you guys see me looking down periodically, that's why I'm reading my notes. I don't really have anything here I can put it on. I'm starting to ramble. Maybe it's because I wanted to get past the 5-minute mark. So if I needed to cuss, I could. But let's get into this, shall we? So Raw emanated last night from the Paycom Center in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. Sami Zayn was the first person out, and he welcomed us to the season premiere of Raw. And he started going off a little bit on how weird it was that his brother, Kevin Owens, was no longer there with him. But he's okay because he knows KO will get to do bigger and better things over on the SmackDown brand. He's happy that he's going to get to stand on his own 2 feet, but he also needs to address the elephant in the room and the fact that main event Jey Uso is the reason why his brother isn't here. So we kind of get a little bit of this. Is there resentment between Sammy and Jey? And that would come back to play later on in the evening. He goes on to say that even though KO is gone, this has been the best year ever. And it's kind of hard to argue that. I mean, especially for people that have followed the career of Sami Zayn, El Generico, and main eventing WrestleMania Night 1, winning the championships, 30 minutes, 15 minutes away in good traffic from where Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens kind of cut their teeth at Pro Wrestling Guerrilla and made a name for themselves that then went to Ring of Honor, went to NXT, went to the main roster brands. It's kind of hard to argue that this isn't the biggest year, at least in Sami's career, with KO having been world champion. Maybe not his, but definitely Sami's. Judgment Day comes out, interrupts him, says that if anybody is going to open up the season premiere of Raw, it should be them. They mention how now that they've gotten rid of KO, they just need to get rid of Sami, Cody, Jey, and Drew McIntyre. The Judgment Day try to ambush Sami, but Jey comes out for the save with 2 steel chairs, kind of have the Judgment Day retreat. All in all, I thought this was a good opening segment. It definitely established, again, the tension between Sami and Jey. We got a little bit of the Judgment Day, which was going to factor into the main event later in the evening. As we all know, the Judgment Day were going to challenge Jey and Cody for the tag team titles. It was a solid way to start the show. Maybe a little long if I'm being nitpicky, but solid nonetheless. We then got a Shinsuke Nakamura video package promo, and I've said it a few times on Simply Predicting, on watch-alongs, on open mic nights. I love where they're going with the Shinsuke Nakamura presentation. I just feel like we need something firm from him. We're developing this darker gimmick, but he continues to lose. We need that upswing on this darker Nakamura gimmick, whether they're going to try to do what they did all those years ago with Tajiri, Akio, Sakota, and have a Yakuza style of faction or whatever, but we need to start to see an upswing in Nakamura here now that we've gotten this darker persona kind of bubbling under the surface. He asks in his promo whose idea the Falls Count Anywhere match was. Was it Ricochet's himself or was it Adam Pearce's? And then he says that he is going to squash Ricochet on the dirty floor like a fly or a mosquito. And again, this was just a solid segment here from Shin because you really started to get more of this sense that he's become unhinged. Before we had our first match, we had Ricochet come out to the ring, went to commercial, come back, and we get Sammy kind of walking through the backstage area, and he talks to Jey Uso about Kevin Owens no longer being on the show and how it's his fault. And Sammy just kind of vents to him and gets his frustrations out. Jey ends up walking away because he feels like he's kind of being shunned by Sammy to a certain extent. And when you go back and you think about the bloodline angle and how Jay was always the one that was adamant that Sammy didn't belong, and Sammy just pushed and pushed and pushed to the point where Jay finally cracked and supported Sammy, to see this kind of flip where Jay is there now for Sammy regardless of what's going on, and Sammy's like, man, I I love you, you my ooze, but my other brother isn't here no more, and it's your fault. And Jay goes, walks away. Sammy realizes what he's done. He chases after him, apologizes, and they embrace in the backstage area. We then go back to the introductions for the match. Nakamura comes out, and we get our first match of the evening. Ricochet versus Shinsuke Nakamura. Falls count anywhere. And this easily could have been the main event with all the shit that they pulled out here. It was just an insane matchup. I don't mean any insult when I say this, but this is the type of match I feel like I could have seen at an indie federation, with all the risks that they took, putting their body on the line. This match would have fit right at home in original ECW, that 95 to 99 era Philadelphia homegrown promotion. They're fighting back to Gorilla. We're seeing freaking Jason Jordan, Petey Williams, Hurricane Helms back there in the Gorilla position, producers, commentators, whatnot. Nakamura goes for the GTS, but Ricochet counters out of it. We go to commercial, come back, they're fighting in the crowd. Ricochet climbs up the stairwell, mounts the railing, and does a shooting star press off of the railing onto Nakamura and the security guards below. I was like, what the hell? This was just insanity. And then again, going back to my indie comment, I think about the videos that I've seen of like Chris Hero and CM Punk back in IWA Mid-South, where they literally were trying to rip the roof off of the building because it was about to be demolished the next day anyway. So they were like, hell, if we can literally bring the roof down, let's do it. And that's what I kept flashing back to with this match, with stuff like that. And again, original ECW, New Jack jumping off the balcony, the insanity. Went for a table spot. Shin hits the GTS again, only gets 2. Goes for the Kinshasa, he misses. Ricochet gets a springboard 450, only gets a 2 count. Some great near falls here. Ends up with a kick from Shin off of Ricochet while he's perched on the top turnbuckle, sending him through the table that was set up at the ringside area. Shinsuke finally gets the Kinshasa. 1, 2, 3. Shinsuke Nakamura picks up the victory here. Hell of a match. Arguably, this was my favorite match of the night. And this was our curtain jerker. Again, this very easily could have been the main event match with everything that was going on, and as personal as it was. This match, I feel, was more personal than any other match on the card. We then go to another backstage segment. A lot of women featured in this one. Again, we can definitely kind of see some of the shift in the writing and the creative with how much women have been getting featured lately. I love it. We had Tegan Knox, Caden Carter, Katana Chance, all backstage. Nikki Cross is kind of like hiding on one of the production carts. She's there. but she's trying to blend into the projection carts, fly on the wall, just kind of overhearing without really being visible. Chelsea Green and Piper Niven crash the party and start jaw jacking. They trash talk Natalia, who's been coming to help the younger girls here lately, the rookies, if you will, to the main roster, specifically as of late, Tegan Knox. Natalia is going to be facing Piper Niven later on in the show. We then get a Gunther and Imperium video package to kind of hype up the Intercontinental Championship match that'll be coming up later on. And then we go to the next match, which is in fact our first of 2 women's matches for the show, Natalia versus Piper Niven. Now, I don't want to be overly critical of the women, but this was just a standard match, nothing too fancy. There were some sloppy counters towards the end where they were going for pinfalls and reversals. I'm not sure the reason behind it. I've got my speculation. I'm not going to verbalize my speculation because I don't want it to come across as me trying to shame specifically Piper Niven because of her being a more full-figured woman. But some sloppy counters towards the end. Chelsea got onto the ring apron and Natalia gets kicked from Piper, trying to kick Natalia off of her. Natty gets kicked into Chelsea Green, knocks her off the ring apron. Piper tries to capitalize, hits the basement crossbody block for the victory. Afterwards, Chelsea and Piper get in the numbers advantage, try to get the better of Natalia, but here comes Tegan Knox for the save. And maybe we're going to have a tag team match coming up either next week or a little bit down the road with Chelsea and Piper maybe putting their straps on the line against Natty and Tegan. We'll have to see how this further develops from here. Again, standard match from these 2 ladies. I am glad to see both Piper Niven and Natty getting a little bit more TV time. And yeah, it's wild how often the ladies are being featured these days. Tag match, you say? Holla holla. So that takes care of the second match on the show. We go backstage for our 5th segment overall. Judgment Day backstage. Damian Priest saying that he wants to take care of Drew McIntyre still, but Dom reminds him what Mommy says. Leave Drew alone. Got to focus on the tag team titles. And Rhea enters the scene right around this point, just when it looked like they're going to try and dismiss some of what Mommy's saying, she enters the fray at the perfect opportunity. Says that she's been handling Judgment Day business, which is why she hasn't been there with the trio. Drew has been taken care of, and tonight the women's division will be reminded why Mommy is always on top. I'm just going to ignore that comment. Yeah. See what's going on here. Natty is the real queen. Suck it, Charlotte. I agree. The Queen of Hearts. Jeff disputing that. The banter back and forth between these 2, you gotta love it. We then go to our next segment with the visionary, the revolutionary, the Monday Night Messiah, the leader of Monday Night Rollins, Seth freaking Rollins. And he welcomes us to the season premiere of Monday Night Rollins and begins to question Drew's involvement as of late with the Judgment Day. Drew comes out. They trade a few jabs back and forth verbally. Seth shows a video package that shows Drew backstage talking to Mommy. They go back and forth a little bit more. Drew insults Seth's theme song that everybody sings along to, saying that he's got his own theme song like that, but he doesn't use it because he doesn't want to pander to the audience. Seth says that Drew needs to get over the bloodline and kind of move on from things because clearly the bloodline has moved on from him. Just a really solid back and forth here, and I'm looking forward to where the match is going to go come Crown Jewel. We then got a big Bronson Reed video package, which I think is stupid calling him Big Bronson Reed. It's like that's the best you can do is Big Bronson Reed for a nickname. What about the Behemoth Bronson Reed? Because dude is massive. He is more than big. Dude is a monster. He is a behemoth. I'm just saying, let's just work on these nicknames. If we're going to insist on giving them stupid nicknames, let's give them something a little bit better than something just so generic as Big Bronson Reed. But I digress. We then get a makeshift match, so I don't have a graphic for it. Ludwig Kaiser versus Johnny Gargano. Ciampa isn't cleared to compete, so Gargano is out there by himself. We got a pretty good flurry in the beginning, but just not enough for Gargano to be able to maintain the offense, maintain the momentum. Kaiser basically cuts him off at every turn, upper hand. Plus, he's got Vinci out there at ringside to help assist him. It's a typical game of cat and mouse. Ludwig Kaiser gets the victory. Again, at the end of the day, it wasn't a special match. It wasn't anything memorable. It was just kind of standard. It almost felt like filler. We then see Becky Lynch backstage, and she's approached by Indy Hartwell and Candice LeRae. Again, got 3 more women on the show. And Indy kind of is like, it's great that you're giving all these women title shots. Tegan Knox is getting one. But what about me? I never lost the NXT Women's Championship. Indy had to surrender it due to drafting and injury. So Becky was like, yeah, anytime, any place, I'm going to go talk to Adam Pearce and we'll see what we can do. So Indy and Candice kind of walk off, and Xia Li enters the frame. 2nd week in a row. Wow, Xia Li still has a deal. It was like, okay. And she's like, what about me? Because there was a little bit of a tease last week between Xia Li and Becky Lynch. Looked like there may be something coming from that. And again, Becky said pretty much anytime, any place, just step up. Xia Li said that she'll do it, she'll challenge, but it'll be on her own time and terms, basically. Then get another backstage segment. A lot of backstage segments and in-ring segments today. Drew and Sami Zayn backstage, and Drew begins to compliment Sami about how his behavior has been, for lack of a better phrase, since coming to Raw. Since he left the bloodline and him and KO became tag champs, and he's just kind of been out to prove to everybody that he's not the same Sami Zayn that he was prior to joining the bloodline. And Sami takes that as a compliment, but then Drew kind of stops him and is like, I was going to tell you all that stuff. But then there's Jey Uso, who you've pretty much forgiven, and he hasn't given him the reason to kind of be forgiven yet. He just forgave him willy-nilly. And Sammy defends Jay. I know Jay. Jay's a good dude. Everybody has kind of given him that second chance except you, Drew. Seth is right. You need to get over the bloodline type of thing. And Drew says that with the attitude that Sammy has, he'll never be a world champion. This kind of gets under Sammy's skin. So Sammy challenges Drew next week on Raw. So next week on Raw, it is official Adam Pearce style. We will get Sami Zayn versus Drew McIntyre. I'm definitely looking forward to that one. Another backstage segment. This is a promo with Rhea Ripley, Mommy. Or excuse me, this isn't backstage, this is in ring. And Rhea begins to talk about all the women that have been chasing her in recent weeks, from Nia Jax to Raquel Rodriguez. And this will always be Monday Night Mommy. But regardless of who it is that's coming after her, Mommy will always be on top. So this is like the third or the fourth like Raw nickname that they've done over the course of the show here. And I'm just waiting to see all the merchandise start popping up because we know WWE and the merchandise machine. Monday Night Mommy, Monday Night Rollins, it's we need that kind of merchandise. I saw another image circulating around the internet. I'll bring that up a little bit later. But yeah. So then we go to the match. Rhea Ripley versus Shayna Baszler. Boom. It's a good back and forth match. Again, nothing special between these two, which really disappointed me. You figure the sheer strength and brutality of Rhea Ripley, and you think about the MMA stylings of Shayna Baszler. I was hoping for so much more for this, but at the end of the day, it was all just a tease. There was some good back and forth, nothing really special. Ended in a schmoz when all the other aforementioned women, Nia Jax, Zoe Starks, and Raquel Rodriguez all came out, entered the fray. Shenanigans ensued, and we would find out later on what that would lead to at Crown Jewel. Don't want to get too far ahead of myself. Jeff here keeping up the Casa botch count for the day. 1. Not that for later, stat boy. Is that a botch on Jeff with the botch count? Is it supposed to be note that for later, stat boy? That's right. I just called you out on your own botch count. So from there, we go backstage, and Becky Lynch is now talking to Adam Pearce regarding the title defense against Indy. He says that it'll happen on Raw next week as long as Shawn Michaels down at NXT approves of this. Xia Li comes in, and we get a little bit more of that. Or did I get ahead of myself? That may be a legitimate botch. Tongue-tiedness, Jeff, I wouldn't count as a botch. This is a botch. So this is the official one right now. Asks why she's not getting the title shots. Jade Cargill then comes in after Xia Li leaves and kind of just compliments Becky, saying nice belt. Becky Lynch tells her to get in line. Jade's like, kind of chuckles it off and comments to Pearce about how funny she is. And then they begin a little bit of friendly banter back and forth, Jade Cargill and Adam Pearce. She's wearing this gorgeous blue boa And Pierce kind of jokingly, welcomes her to Raw and then asks if she can get a red one of those since Raw is the red brand. We then go to Jackie Redmond backstage with Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso. She asks about Sammy, and Jey says, that that's kind of his boy. He's got his back regardless what's going on. Cody mentions the Judgment Day and how they're the perfect opponent for their title defense here this evening and everything that's been going on. Cody throws it back to Jey to give the one word for everybody: yeet. Why yeet is a thing, I don't know, but I'm just glad to see Cody giving the push to Jey here. And I think at the end of the day, that was the whole purpose of them having that match at Fastlane. Winning the titles was to give Jey that rub to be, more than just a tag team guy, even though he's a tag team champion, if that makes any sense, because you're partnered up with the American Nightmare. So you're getting that main event rub for main event Jey Uso. We then get our next match, Big Bronson Reed challenging the Reign General Gunther for the Intercontinental Championship. This was just one of those big hoss fights. This was big meaty men slapping meat. Gunther was not able to execute his traditional technical style, though, due to the size and the girth of Bronson Reed. That made it a bit of a difference for Gunther. He had to change his style up some, had turned it more into a brawl fight. But at the end of the day, Gunther was able to show off some of his strength and hit the power bomb onto Big Bronson Reed, get the victory, and still your Intercontinental Champion, Gunther. This was probably the, without going into the main event, which obviously we'll get to momentarily. Aside from Falls Count Anywhere, this was the next best match before we got to the main event. Again, let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Let's try and keep within the context of what's going on. Every now and again, you get these big hoss fights, and it's just abysmal to watch. And then you get that diamond in the rough big hoss fight where it's like, I need more of this. And this was one of those. I need more of this. I need to see a little bit more of Bronson Reed and Gunther. I thought that despite their difference in styles, that there was enough good chemistry that we can definitely run this back for a decent little feud here to maybe help get us through the end of the year, kind of like how the Chad Gable feud got us through the end of summer and into fall. We then go backstage and we see the awesome one, The Miz, again talking with Jackie Redmond. He says that you don't start a season premiere with Sami Zayn. You start it with The Miz. And to a certain extent, I can kind of see where he's coming from, especially, you got to keep with Miz's arrogance going. But it was all for naught as Nia Jax came, snatched the microphone, punked Miz out like big time, and basically says that everybody has brought their best at her, and she's still standing and looking pretty, while she hasn't even begun to bring her best yet. Now, I'm not going to be overly critical because Nia Jax kind of had her come up in my absence. I have heard the rumors of her being sloppy. I have heard the rumors of her injuring people, but she's also been gone for a while. So I'm willing to give the benefit of the doubt that she's improved on whatever may have been wrong in the past in her presentation and her ability, to the point where I can believe that this big bad chick could still have not shown the ace up her sleeve yet. You know, we were just talking about the big Haas fight between Gunther and Bronson Reed. Can I have Nia Jax versus Piper Niven, please? Can we do that? Can we have a female big Haas fight? I think that would just be freaking phenomenal. I think that would be just outstanding. We then go backstage and we see Adam Pearce. He's on the phone and he's kind of thanking someone, agreeing to something on the phone. One can only assume he's talking to Shawn Michaels regarding the Becky Lynch thing. And then when we get our next commercial and we get our teasers for next week's Raw, we do find out it is official. It will be Indy Hartwell versus Becky Lynch for the NXT Women's Championship next week on Raw. Rhea Ripley then barges in and starts to make some demands of Adam Pearce. And Pearce has basically had enough. And he tells her that she is going to defend her women's championship in Saudi Arabia at Crown Jewel in a fatal 5-way match, as it will be Rhea Ripley, Nia Jax, Zoe Starks, Raquel Rodriguez, and Shayna Baszler. Josh, going back to the big Haas woman fight, saying, I think I speak for the rest of your audience when I say no Renegade, that's a bad Renegade. No. Again, Josh, understand, I didn't see the bad Nia that everybody else has seen in the past. And if she has improved during her time away from the E, don't you think she deserves a second chance? Let's give her a little bit more than a month or two and see what happens. Let's give her 6 months to a year before we start really criticizing her as far as her performance in ring. Right now, she's being booked amazingly. She's being booked like a monster. Piper is being booked like a monster. And even though they're both heels, I think it would be a hell of either a tandem or a match. But let's give her the benefit of the doubt. Innocent till proven guilty. Okay? That's all I'm saying. We then catch up with Alpha Academy, and they're kind of working out in the backstage area. This was a throwaway segment. I think the only purpose that this segment served was the fact that we were able to start in, kind of zooming in on the posterior of Maxine Dupree before exposing Otis and Gable and Tozawa, who was like jazzercising with a couple of 5-pound dumbbells. Don't get me started, but to take a phrase from my daughter, Akira Tozawa was a mood during that promo. It just was what it was. They're discussing their plans for the upcoming year on Raw, how Chad Gable wants to get another shot at the Intercontinental title. Alpha Academy wants to get their tag titles back. New Day comes in, and a friendly challenge gets laid down for next week on Raw, Alpha Academy versus the New Day. We then go backstage once again. Gunther is walking through the area, really happy, kind of celebrating his victory. And he comes across Ludwig Kaiser and Giovanni Vinci. And He praises Kaiser for his victory and his win. And then he turns his attention to Vinci and he kind of puts him down for not delivering, even though Vinci helped Kaiser win his match. So Gunther kind of puts all the cards on the table and is like, you're going to have a match next week against Johnny Gargano. You need to win. And then he looks at Kaiser and is like, and it's your job to make sure that he does. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here if the rest of Imperium crumbles. If Vinci loses, is he excommunicado from Imperium? What about Kaiser if Vinci fails to win? Will we end up with a Gunther single act? Definitely kind of curious to see what happens here. And then we go to our main event as Cody Rhodes and Jey Uso defend the undisputed tag team championships against the Judgment Day contingent of Damian Priest and Finn Balor. Where to go with this one? It was a good match. It was a solid match. The tag team work between all four men was good. The cohesion between Cody and Jey, I think, was excellent, considering they're still kind of very new as a tandem. Obviously, Priest and Balor have been together as a unit for a lot longer, so their cohesion really was on display here. But going for the Cody 1D and only getting a 2 count off it, I thought that was like, wow, okay, so we're already not protecting their finisher. You know, you hear about how certain people's finishers are protected and people never kick out of them. You know, I think about the Dudley Boys and how nobody kicked out of their 3D for the longest time. And they were willing to let The Undertaker kick out of the 3D. And he was like, no, you got to protect your finisher. No one's ever kicked out of it. I'm not going to kick out of it. And here we are. Granted, was this going to be a long-term thing? Of course not. But the fact that here we are just a few weeks into this title run, this team run, and people are already kicking out of the Cody 1D, I thought that was horrible. The match overall was solid, but the kick out of the Cody 1D I thought was really a bad idea. If they had just done the standard 3D, basically, that the Usos always called the 1D, I would have been okay with it because it wasn't Jimmy and Jay doing it. It was Jay and Cody doing it. But for, again, I feel like I'm repeating myself here, but for the kick out of the Cody 1D, I thought that was bad taste, bad form. Jimmy Uso ends up showing up. Brand split LOL, costing his brother and Cody the match and the titles and your new undisputed tag team champions, the Judgment Day. Here's where I have a problem with this. Aside from the fact that the Cody 1D is no longer a protected finish. What was the point in taking the belts off of them in the first place? They lost the belts and were titleless for like 8 days. Cody and Jay had like an 8-day run, 9-day run. Just it didn't make any sense to me. I don't see why Cody and Jay should have won the belts in the first place. maybe I'm alone in my thought process of this. I've got Mansfield saying that it was a right call for new tag champs and right call for Jimmy to cost them. Okay, but if you're gonna do Judgment Day tag team champions with Priest and the Money in the Bank briefcase and the push that he's trying to make towards becoming world champion, why wouldn't you do Balor and JD McDonough? Why wouldn't you do McDonough and Dom? Why wouldn't you do Balor and Dom? The whole thing, I thought and expected, with them taking the belts off of Priest and Balor, was that they were going to eventually put the belts onto Balor and McDonough. And that was going to be his initiation, his solidification as a part of the Judgment Day. So while I'm not necessarily mad that the Judgment Day got the belts back, I'm more mad that their reign got interrupted for 9 days or whatever it was for seemingly no good reason. Mikey says to slow down Judgment Day a little bit. Maybe, but when you look at how dominant some of their other championship runs have been lately, Roman in like 1,140 something days, Rhea since WrestleMania, Gunther surpassing the honky tonky meter. Why would you halt the momentum on that? Especially since the tag titles have been kind of hot potatoed lately. Sammy and KO got them at Mania. Then they lost the titles to the Judgment Day. Then like a month later, Judgment Day loses the belts to Cody and Jay, and then not even 2 weeks later, Judgment Day gets the belts back. It just doesn't make sense for me. I agree that, where is it? Mikey T in the chat. What up, Mikey T? I feel like we missed out on Jimmy and Solo versus Cody and Jay for the tag titles. Why was this not a thing before pulling the trigger? To help further the bloodline, we saw them all come out on SmackDown and go face to face with Cody and Jay. This should have been a match before the trigger was pulled on putting the belts back onto the Judgment Day. This match maybe should have happened in Saudi Arabia. Cody and Jay retain, and then if you want to move the belts, drop them back the next night on Raw, whatever, a couple nights later on Raw. I'm a little bit baffled. I'm wondering if the decision to put the belts on Cody and Jay was a Vince decision, and now that the reports are going around that Vince is no longer has any creative power, if getting the belts back off of them was a Papa H decision. That's the only thing that I can think of that would make any kind of sense in the layout of the story here. Is putting the belts on Cody was a Vince decision, and now they wanted to undo the last Vince decision. I do agree we need to either split the tag belts or just create a new championship belt for the tag team wrestlers, because Roman got a new belt, Asuka got a new belt, Rhea got a new belt, A belt was created for Raw that Seth got, so you can't really count that Seth got a new belt. We need to get new belts for the tag titles. It just needs to be a thing. So, thank you very much, Mikey T. Greatly appreciate the kudos. We miss you on open mic night, brother. Need you to pop in once again. Hey, got a super chat. Woo woo. $5 super chat from Jeff. Gonna scoop Mansfield on aging the dads. Happy 25th to the Disney Channel OG movie Halloween Town. I'll go fetch my Ovaltine. Jesus, Jeff. Now I'm a feel like a bad Disney fan because I've never seen any of the Halloween Town movies. Just like you had never seen Hocus Pocus until you went to the theater for the 30th anniversary this year, I've never seen a Halloween Town movie. I'll see him eventually. As a matter of fact, once Renegades Reviews returns, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but my girlfriend Cece has been actually making me a list of family-friendly Halloween movies to do 1 October. So I'm sure we'll get to Halloween Town there. You know what, Mansfield? I'm not even going to acknowledge you by putting your comment up on the screen because I'm sure I could start rattling off a shit ton of movies that you've never seen that are iconic and classic. So don't even give me that. But anyways, I want to thank everybody for tuning in to the series premiere of For the Love of Money. I appreciate the love and the support. I appreciate the super chats. I hope that this grows going forward. I hope I keep getting the turnout that I got today and the love that you guys are giving me back. All in all, I will say this about Raw. I felt like it was too segment heavy. I think I counted 15 or 16 promos, segments, whatever you want to call them, not even counting the Gunther and Big Bronson Reed video packages we got, as opposed to 6 matches. I'm not saying that I want the old days where we had a bunch of like 5-minute BS matches, but I feel like we could have maybe given some of the other matches a little bit more time and reduced some of the backstage BS. That's definitely something I noticed a lot during the Triple H era was longer matches. And I hope we can get back there over time. But that was probably my biggest complaint for the presentation yesterday on a whole. Too many backstage and in-ring promo segments, not enough wrestling. Damn it, but I digress. Pop just joined in, commented, peace and love, of course. So again, thank you to everybody for tuning in. I greatly appreciate each and every one of you. And until tomorrow, when I will be reviewing NXT, same bat time, same bat channel, I am the Renegade of Wrestling, JJ Williams, and I will see you guys next time.
The Jeff Meacham Network's Multiverse of Media. For over 15 years, the recognized symbol of excellence and the standard bearer in coverage of sports and entertainment.